So welcome everyone to Combating Gender-Based Violence, Grassroots Strategies. I'm Kath Clark, Communications Co-Director at Interpares, and I'm joining you today from Algonquin territory of the Anishinaabe people, which is also where our office is located and which remains unceded and unsurrendered. In acknowledging the land, we also want to reaffirm our commitment to act in solidarity with Indigenous peoples in three key ways. One, nurturing programmatic links with Indigenous movements and activism, particularly feminist organizing. Two, supporting Indigenous resistance and resurgence. And three, encouraging our organization supporters and other non-Indigenous folks in the general public to support and invest in the movement for Indigenous rights and decolonization. In highlighting these commitments, I'm reminding myself and encouraging other non-Indigenous folks with us here to take a moment to reflect on how these commitments might inform our engagement in today's conversation. Before we begin, I have a few housekeeping items to note. If you require tech support at any point during the webinar, you can message me. My name's Kath Clark. And using the chat function, also at the bottom of your screen, the chat will remain open throughout the webinar. We'll have a Q&A after the main presentation. Click the Q&A button also at the bottom of your screen and type in your questions in the window that pops up and we'll come back to them. We'd also love to know who's here with us today and where you're joining from. So please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. And the webinar will be recorded, so we'll be sure to get the recording to you afterwards. On that note, I'll pass it over to David to get us started.
Thanks very much, Kath, and welcome everybody. My name is David Brewer, and I'm a program manager with Interpares, and I'm happy that people can be with us today as we hear about the work of our counterpart, the Women's Collective, from the state of Tamil Nadu in southern India. I know that for most of you, Interpares is not new. For others who are new to Interpares, let me briefly introduce the organization. We see ourselves as a feminist social justice organization. So we don't particularly like the international development language that talks about nice, caring Northerners helping poor, deserving Southerners. We see things as social justice issues. We were formed in 1975, so we've been around for quite a while. We have one small office here in Ottawa with about 18 staff, and we have a flat structure, meaning that we all collectively manage this organization. Our approach is to form long-term relationships with groups in the Global South and support them with stable financial and political support. Interpares means among equals, and that is how we try to manage the relationships that we have with our partners. They know their realities and what needs to be done to bring about the social, the economic, the political changes that are needed. It's not our role. I don't go to India and say, okay, Women's Collective, this is what you should be doing. I'm not an expert on Southern India. It would be really silly for me to try and do that. Our role is to be in solidarity with our Southern partners. We came to know about the Women's Collective through another of our counterparts, the Deccan Development Society, or DDS, in a neighboring state of India. The two organizations collaborate around issues of women and food sovereignty and the promotion of agroecological farming. And we started supporting the Women's Collective in 2019. And then, as I'm sure everyone is aware, very soon after, the world was hit by the COVID-19 pandemic. And along with the disease, there was a tremendous surge in the cases of sexual and gender-based violence around the world. The Women's Collective works with marginalized women, most of whom are farmers, but they face many other issues as well. And violence is certainly one of them. So today we're going to hear about the work of the Women's Collective, and in particular, the work to address this issue. So I'm really, really pleased to have Sheelu Francis with us today. And I'd like to briefly introduce her. She is the president of the Tamil Nadu Women's Collective, one of the founding members. The network, the collective is a network of rural grassroots level women's groups working in 20 districts of Tamil Nadu and focusing on Dalit rights, or I think some people may know the term untouchable, on local governance, the rights of workers in the unorganized sector, and the rights of senior citizens. It has empowered close to 100,000 rural and marginalized women. Sheelu is an international spokesperson and actively speaks before the world about international trade, about debt, about the impact of transnational corporations on local development, on food security and food sovereignty. She's been recognized internationally, winning the 2013 Food Sovereignty Prize from the US Food Sovereignty Alliance, and in India by one of the major news channels, NDTV, as one of the Women of Worth, nominated for the Women of Worth Award. She's got a diploma in gender planning and development from the University of London. And I am honored to cede the floor to Sheelu now to talk about the really great work that I've had the pleasure to go and see in person, and that you're going to hear about now from Sheelu. So Sheelu, I'm going to turn it over to you, and I know you've got a presentation that you will share with us before we move into questions and discussion.
Good evening and good morning to you all. Happy to meet you through this media, because this is a new media which we have picked up during the pandemic time. So it's very useful for us to communicate with the others world over. So today we are going to share our work through some slides. I'll just share the slides. I think you have to enable me. The host, whoever is.
I think we need to make you co-host. I'm not sure.
Yeah. You should be
Okay.
able to share them now.
I am joined with the Punnutai, who is the secretary of the organization, and she is from the southernmost district, Tenkasi. We had an International Women's Day celebration today with the State Women's Commission, and she was here to participate in that. Thank you. Okay, as David introduced, Women's Collective is working in Tamil Nadu for the last 28 years, and we are working in around 1,000 villages with more than 100,000 population, and we are working with all different sections in the community, be it the women, the children, the elders, the women farmers, consumers, and also the unorganized sector. So this gives a glimpse of the different kinds of activities that we are involved across the state. These are the districts where we are working. There are about 38 districts in Tamil Nadu, and we are in 20 districts, particularly in the dry belt. We are not in the wet area, particularly the delta area of the river, where there is good cultivation. So we are in dryland area, so where women are involved in dryland cultivation. Mostly the dryland cultivation is in the hands of women. So we are there with them, trying to organize them. See, this is just to I'm coming to the work, issues of violence against men, what we are trying to do with the interpaths. That's one of the part of our work. It's not that only in those area where we are working we are focusing on that. We are focusing on the issues of violence against women across the state. Wherever there is an issue, we try to address it. As long as the issue comes to us, we will go there. So this is just to give an idea about the situation in Tamil Nadu. The state of Tamil Nadu is the seventh largest state in India. We have a population of about I'll just come to the our way of numbering, otherwise I will get confused. So we have around 7.88 crores of people, out of which 3.35 crores are women. Nearly 49% are women. And the sex ratio, the current sex ratio is 935 for 935 women for every 1,000 men. And mainly because of the sex selective abortion that is practiced, and also the female infanticide that is practiced. It's also this practice of child marriage. So we have young mothers. They find it very difficult to go through their pregnancy and delivery, and we lose them. So that is why the population of women is much lesser than the population of men. Actually, based on the health, the women should be more than the men, because women have more immunity power. They naturally stand all the odds in life. But because of all these practices, the number of women is increasingly decreasing, and there are selected districts where this issue is very high. Interpath's work is focusing on those districts where the child marriage rate is high, where the female infanticide practice is high, where sex selective abortions is high. So we have selected such districts where the information that we have from National Family Health Survey is much compared to the other districts is much low. The other practice in the society is the patrilineal and patrilocal practices, where the women, they get married and they move to the bridegroom's family. Because of that, they don't have access to movable property. Naturally, they will be getting only immovable property, if at all they have any property. So the first thing in the family is that they lose that. As soon as there is a crisis in the family, the movable property will be immediately used, whether it is in the form of jewels or deposits or whatever it is. But the marginalized community with whom we are working, most of the marginalized community do not have access to any of the property, but you will find the lower middle class, that is the backward community or the minority community, do have some property, and I mean do have some access to jewels and funds which they lose in the course of time. So the okay, this I think everybody knows, I don't have to go through it, the issues of violence. See, the child marriage issue is something which we have highlighted, and there are villages, special villages in Tamil Nadu and districts in Tamil Nadu where the child marriage is very high, and pandemic time increased the number of child marriages mainly because of the security problem, because all the children were at home, because all the schools were locked, and access to food was a problem, because if they went to school, the government provided midday meals, so at least their one time meal was something which was assured. That was not available, and the mothers, young mothers also got food from the government during the non-pandemic period. So this actually was really a blow to the families, poor families, and also they lost their the only livelihood that they had, either labor or something like that. Except for agriculture labor work, all others lost their livelihood opportunities and their income, and the only food that was available was the rations, free rations, which were provided by the state government and central government. And of course, organizations like us were trying to get some relief across and trying to give them, and we were selecting only the poorest of the poor who really had problems. So all these things led to the number of increase in child marriage. We have come across cases where people have sold their girl children just to get 5,000 rupees, 6,000 rupees, so that they can buy food for the rest of the family. So such practices are there. Mainly because of pandemic situation, it increased widely. Well, the health condition is also deteriorating. As I told, the women's health condition is really bad, and we find that nearly 57% of the women in Tamil Nadu, it's not only the marginalized women, generally the women in pregnant women in Tamil Nadu are anemic, and this is a very big issue. Because of this also, pregnancy and delivery is a very big problem. And wasting and stunting is another problem among the children. The underweight among the children due to nutrition deficiency and insufficient food availability has also increased during pandemic period. And as I told you earlier, because of this, their right is totally denied, and it is violated, and their school education is denied. Children have dropped out of schools, and either they have sent as child labor, or they have got married, or they have been sold. So these are the things which are happening in the remote villages. And women labor, as I told you, they lost their livelihood. It got reduced to 2% from 10.5% during the pandemic period. So people, even the women who had work, especially majority of the women were unorganized workers. They were not having access or mobility to get out of the family, and the men in the family, because the men were also not going out, the men were in the family, they were in that small room 24 hours, which also increased the issues of violence against women because of lack of food and things like that, money, infighting. The government actually closed the alcoholic shop for the first lockdown period, but after subsequently they opened it up. Because of that, there was a lot of violence issue in these families, because the men took away the little savings that women had. They sold the cycles which they use for travel. They sold small vessels which are used for cooking. They sold children's children were given cycles, girl children were given cycles to go to school. All those things were actually either sold or pledged by the men, and they used it for drinking. So this also a lot of fight after drinking, beating up and things like that. So the number of cases reported in the police station also increased during the pandemic period. So this is protest. We are protesting against issues of violence against women. The Tamil banner says violence against women network. So the women's organization which are coming, all of us are having a hat, but it looks something different. Okay. So what we are trying to depict is that everywhere there is violence. It's not only in Tamil Nadu, it's all over India, the violence. So that is the thing that we are protesting against. Yeah, as I told you, the mobility is curtailed, and there is also increase in trafficking and sex work. As the villages where we are working, we have kept a check on all these things, that the children don't drop out of school, the children, they get enough food, none of the children are sent for child labor and things like that. The child marriages also, the children have reported to us immediately, which we have reported to the government and police and have stopped. This we were able to do only in a limited way, but in the district where we are working, one of the districts where we have chosen now, Dharmapuri, district of Dharmapuri, the people were able to stop 400 child marriage, just to give an example. So in one district during the pandemic period alone, they were able to stop 400 child marriages. So that shows the number of cases during this pandemic. And then the next, coming to their political rights, is something which is denied, because we do not have political representation. We find that our voices are not heard. The political representation is the lowest during this period. It's only 5%, and in state level, and in the country level it is only 14.4%. We have limited number of MLAs, and also they are divided, the women MLAs are divided on the basis of their party. So I'll just quote one example what happened recently in the assembly. One of the opposition MLA, women MLA, was trying to explain that the seating arrangement that is made in the assembly is gender biased, because she was seated in between two men. So she said it is gender biased. She said it would be a good idea to put all the women together, so it would be easy, they would feel comfortable. But actually the ruling party, neither the speaker nor the minister nor the person who was the social welfare minister was trying to answer, understood what she was trying to tell. Instead, they were trying to answer saying that we have done so many things for women, we have given 50% reservation at the local level, so many women representation are there in the local panchayat level, we are giving education, we are giving that benefit, this benefit. So they don't even understand what is that a person is trying to say. So that is the condition of the political representation, the men in the assembly, and so you can clearly understand what I mean, that we are trying to really break our head with with big rocks around. That is what we are trying to do. This is the education which we are giving to the college children, the college students join us. This we have done in 2000, and it's an old picture, because for the last 2 years we did not have the walkathon program, because the police have denied permission. This was done in Marina Beach, and there's a large space, so we could gather many college students there, and the education was given to boys and girls, and it was a very good education to them, and many of the students are are with us as volunteers. But these days the government is not permitting us to do any large event, so we have to be satisfied with our Zoom meetings and our small hall meetings. So this is what is happening now. So coming to what we are doing actually with the Interpaths is that we have selected villages where we are trying to form what is called a Gender Equality Vigilance Committee, where we are trying to get young men and women who are below 35 years of age, so that these people would be able to help the others either within that village limit or panchayat limit or in the district whenever an issue comes up. So in the long run, we want the GEVC committee to be strong enough to take up the issue if at all there is an issue, and also to educate the community and to make sure that the community is gender sensitive, whether it is a panchayat representation or other political representation or any programs that is carried out in the villages are carried out on an equal basis. So this is what we are trying to do in villages, and we have selected 6 districts: Theni, Dharmapuri, Ranipet, Tiruvannamalai, Salem and Kallakurichi. As I told you earlier, these are the districts where we have identified the child female infanticide, sex selective abortion and child marriages are on the high. Plus we are also trying to work with the number of child marriage cases during the pandemic period also was very high in these districts. So we have selected these districts and we are trying to work there. And so during pandemic, as we were not able to have this big protest, what we were trying to do is we were trying to protest at the village level, at the house level. So we for violence against women, November 25th or any, I think this is the Hathras issue which we took up, a national issue. Actually, there was a gang rape of a Dalit young girl who was just 19 at Uttar Pradesh, and she was gang raped, murdered, and they didn't file a case against the perpetrator because they belong to the upper caste, and the SP and the collectors also belong to the upper caste. So this issue was actually taken up by all the women's group across India, and then the women's lawyers collective in Delhi went to court. The case was taken, and then re-postmortem was done, and she was and the culprits were arrested. The case is going on. So there was protest in all the villages where we worked. So through Zoom we had given the education and there was protest, and so this is some scenes of the protest of that particular issue. Okay, this is how the GVC committee is formed, that we identify both men and women and train them issues of women's human rights at the village level, build their capacity training program to train others also. And the youngsters would be the potential youth leaders, as I have told you, who would take up the issues at the village level and at the area level. So this is one such team of men who are they are trying to talk with those group of men about, and they have brought women to share the issues with them, so that the men get a direct input from them, the kind of issues, any cases that they have identified that this issue is taken up. So this is a workshop where we have conducted for the participants, trying to get men, as many men as possible, because trying to get gender sensitive men is like UFOs, unidentified flying objects. So this is a real hectic issue that we are involved, and that is why we are trying to create as many gender sensitive men as possible in the community where we are working. This is a program which we have tried to do with getting the government people, department people. This is after the lockdown is lifted, where we have got the government people to get involved, where the GVSA committee members are presenting the kind of support that they would require from the government departments. So this is what they are trying to do. This is done in Tiruvannamalai district. Okay. We are the kind of issue that the GVC committee members are bringing. We are trying to do counseling maximum, but if it doesn't work, we are also trying to get legal support. There are free legal aids. If it doesn't work, then we identify. We have identified advocates in each district who have similar thinking like us, and they are the people who are actually helping in taking up the issues at that level. So the next issue, level what we want to do is, after the village level GVC committee is strengthened, the representatives will come to the district level, because it will be more than 10 villages. In some places it will be more than 20 villages. All these village representatives will form a district level GVC committee, and the district level committee, in long run, the district level committee, we want to make it state level committee, so that there will be very good representation at state level. So this committee will also try to get involved in future. This Tamil Nadu government has actually come out with the draft women policy, which is very skeleton, and there are a lot of drawbacks in the family in the policy. But we are trying to educate these members, so that they can also contribute at whatever different level that they can take up these issues. So that is a process which we are trying to do. So we also get commitment from these members that they commit to actually get involved in the issues of violence against women. And unless they commit and they sustain, because this is not a regular job for them, this is a voluntary work what they are going. Wherever they go, whatever they do, unless they have their ears and eyes open, they will not identify the discrimination which is carried out around them. So we want these people, the committee people, to be really active throughout their life, wherever it is, 24/7, wherever they go, whether they go for a film, whether they go for travel in the bus, whether they go for a wedding, wherever they find gender discrimination, they should be strong enough to take up the issue and challenge. So that is what we are expecting, and that is the kind of group we want to, actually the strong group that we want to be at the end of the period that we are planning to do. So we want to stop the violence against women. And thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you so much, Sheelu. That was a wonderful presentation, and so much to think about. Well, I'm hoping so much to be able to ask questions about. I have a lot. I'm wondering, your image is very, very broken up on this side. I don't know, maybe we would do better just switching off the camera, Sheelu. I don't know. So thanks again very much for the presentation. I'd like to jump in with some questions myself, and then if people want to put questions into the Q&A at the bottom, I'll try to monitor that. But let me begin, Sheelu, just saying, you noted in the presentation all of these things that have become so much worse during the pandemic. So that the issue of child marriage, the domestic violence, the unemployment that women faced. As India is recovering from the pandemic, we hope, do you see that improving, or where are we in that cycle? Is it still as bad as it was earlier on, or do you see changes happening?
Um, Actually, the lockdown is totally lifted now. Uh, Although people are talking about next wave which is going to come up in June, but it is totally lifted, and um, the self-employed people, like people who have small shops, petty shops, eateries and things like that, many of them have gone back, to their original work, mainly because there was support. There was support in the sense the government supported the small business people to start up, to do their startup, because they spent all their investment, no, so the government gave a support of 5,000 rupees through the SSGs. So all the self-help group members were given some money through the banks as a support to restart their work. So most of such workers have really started, and most of the agriculture laborers have also gone back to work. There's hardly anyone. The children have gone back to school, but there are school dropouts. We find from government school alone, more than 100,000 children have dropped out of school. So now we are in the process of trying to find out whether these children are from our village. So nearby government schools we are trying to, because we have our children's group. From our children's group we have understood that none of our children have dropped out of school. But now we are trying to find out if there are other children in that locality who have dropped out of school, and that is we are trying to get them back to the school. They have dropped out of school because some of them have gone for work to support the family. So that is something common. Since the women's mobility has increased, the fact that they are able to get out of the house and go for work and earn some money has really given them that freedom, such freedom, and the access, the closeness to the members in the family, because that they are not locked up in one room, and so all those problems are not there, and so that kind of violence is not there. Plus, maybe whatever may be the reason, the central government has sanctioned free ration for another 6 months. So that also saves, because of the free rations, that also has saved a lot of problems. Another new interesting thing that has happened to us is the new women's commission that has come up, and the chairperson seems to be a very sensitive person, because today we had invited a group of women's group, had organized this program and invited the chairperson. So whatever we laid out as an issue, when she was in her speech, she said that she is ready to work with the women's group. She is ready to come to any district she is invited and meet with cases, and she is going to come up with an app to give complaints directly, and also on WhatsApp, so that people can contact her directly instead of getting a written petition which will take ages for her to go through it and to see it and all that. And she also promised that she not only take up the issue and directs the collector and SP to take up the issue, but also will follow it up when she goes to that district with all the case. So that was very encouraging talk which we had today. So we are all really thrilled that we have really we have really identified a good associate among the government, and who is also a political party member, unfortunately. But she seems to be very sensitive, and she has an autism child, so she is also, from the health aspect, she also understands some of the issues and the violence that
Mhm.
children go through because of rape and the digital, the
Mhm.
cyber crimes that is increasing, all those things. So that is something which is encouraging for us. These
Mhm.
are all the new developments that we see, with which we are very happy, and we hope that we will be able to do good work.
So I'd like to pick up on two questions that have been asked in the Q&A and maybe try to merge them a bit. The one is, they're both with respect to the incidence of violence against women. And if you could comment on whether that violence is present across all of the castes, the upper castes as well as the lower castes, and whether you see any difference in terms of educated professionals, people in urban settings, being more sympathetic around issues of violence against women, if the incidence is different in those settings, or if you really see it right across the board.
There is no difference between class, caste, and religion, because we have come across cases of violence against women across the various classes, across various castes, and across various religions. So, violence is something which is universal.
Mm-hmm.
There is no boundary for violence.
I think we see the same thing here in Canada. There is a myth that somehow violence against women is more prevalent in poorer classes, and I think the evidence is not at all in support of that. Sheila, you mentioned it in terms of the gender equality vigilance committees, that you're involving both young women and young men. And I'm wondering if you can talk a bit more about that, and both why you do that, and also, do you face a risk that the men then simply dominate the discussions and dominate those committees?
Okay, the process what we are trying to follow is, we are trying to get the men separately, train them, organize them, the women separately, train them, organize them, and we try to get as much opening for the women as possible, so that they get more strengthened, because we have the older women in our group who are very strong, who take up issues, so they try to learn from their experience. We try to have them in the meetings. We even sometimes call them to give input how they have taken up issues and all that. So we actually try to build them as separate groups once we feel that they are strong enough, and then we bring them together. At the same time, once we feel that the men with whom we are working are sensitive enough to have the women to work together, then we bring the group together and have the either a program or trainings. That is the strategy which we are trying to follow.
Okay, I was
You are
wondering
right.
about that. I know in a lot of places that there's men simply, when you mix both men and
You are
women
right.
together, the men simply dominate the
You are
space.
right, because that is the usual practice, and that is a societal understanding that they are the leaders. So naturally, that will be there. So we
Um,
have to carefully avoid that.
okay, no, that's great. Thanks for the clarification. Um, one of the slides, or well, a couple of the slides you were showing sort of the interactions with local authorities, and you also mentioned stopping 400 child marriages, which is an amazing achievement. Congratulations to the women on that. I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about how those local authorities respond. I mean, is it a struggle? Are they open to the pressure you put on them to act against the violence?
See, we have a child commission, and we have child helpline. So the child helpline is relatively better organized than the women's thing. So when there is a child marriage, if we know, and if we inform them, what we normally do is that when we come to know that with the details, in which temple, and what is the age of the child, and what is the age of the boy, what is the age of the girl, and the time of the marriage, and the family, all those things, the information, sometimes we get the invitation card also. So once we get now, they are available in WhatsApp. So we send it through WhatsApp. The digital thing is very useful. And so immediately the child helpline informs the local police, and at the district superintendent of police level, there is a team which goes and stops and arrests the family which is involved in the child marriage, and then FIR is filed. So either the girl is rescued, and they will try to find out whether she wants to continue her study, whether she would like to stay on in the family, whether it is comfortable, whether she wants to go to an institution. So accordingly they will try to do that.
What, just out of interest, what is the legal age for marriage in India?
Now it is 18 plus, 18
Okay.
for the girls and 21 for the boys. So there is a proposal, the central government has brought out a proposal to raise the age to 21 for girls also. So there is divided opinion about that. There are women's group which are supporting it, and there are women's group which are opposing it. And the women's collective is supporting it.
So that your position would be in favor of that. Okay.
Yeah, because we feel that the another government's program is also interestingly supports girls' education, because earlier if the poorer family girl studied up to 12th standard, she gets support for marriage, 50,000 rupees for marriage. Now this year the government changed the program to, instead of marriage, they get support for higher studies. If you want to go for undergraduation, then you get support of 1,000 rupees per month for 3 years. Plus post graduation also you get 1,000. If you are trying to do a diploma, a technical education, whatever it is, you will continuously get that support. Plus whatever scholarship you get, because there are Dalit children get scholarship, the backward community gets scholarship, minority gets scholarship. So such support will be also continue. In addition to the girl children, higher education will be supported. So this we feel is a very good initiative that the government is taking, because definitely the girl children's education will be more, and then the poorer family, at least because they are supported, they will go to for higher education. They will not get married immediately. Because of that, all this child pregnancy could be avoided, and girl children will be mature enough to take a decision about their future, about their career, what actually they want to do, because they will get more exposure, more friends, more network, and things like that. So these two are a positive thing that has happened after lockdown.
So we've talked about marriage. I know that in with our counterpart in Bangladesh, which is a largely Muslim culture and country, the issue of divorce is very important, and there are many illegal divorces that happen, and I'm wondering if you could talk about that. If men either divorce or abandon wives, and how is that dealt with? How do you deal with that?
There are cases of men deserting women, married women. At the same time, there are also cases of women leaving their partner because they think that they cannot live with them anymore.
Mhm.
So both the cases we have come across, and then we feel that it is their decision. So whatever it is, we try to support them, and if it is an issue of violence, we try to support them also in that, to get a proper divorce, and then to get legally divorce notice, so that if at all in future they want to live with another partner, that they may do. But the younger generation, the culture is slowly changing, particularly among the educated upper caste urban people. What we see is there is lot of living together, lot of other things. Yes, such things are practiced, and it is practiced, but again what it is that they think it is progressive, but actually at the end of it, the women are more vulnerable, and we have seen n number of cases have come to us where we find that, again, I mean, they are not living together on a equal basis. They may not have a legal marriage certificate, but their relationship will be one of dominance and a subordinate. The same gender role, expected dominant gender roles that these people are playing.
There's another question here that has been asked in the Q&A, and that is around the issue of sex education for students and adults. I think I'm going to expand a little bit on the question in the chat there and say, is that provided in the mainstream education system? And also, I think the question is saying, is that something that the Women's Collective tries to provide as part of your work?
In our children's group, to their level, we are trying to give the input. We have children's group, and then we have our adolescent group, young youth group. So we are trying to give that education to the extent that is possible at the time that is available to us. The government is not giving sex education per se, but this is something which the women's organizations are demanding from the government, that it has to be a syllabus that has to be included, particularly for 8+ children. And the government stops with the good touch, bad touch. Not more than that. Even today, this issue was discussed with the State Women's Commission, the need to include value education and thing in the syllabus. So this was discussed.
No, that's great. It's good to see progress. I'm going to try and squeeze in one more question. I see we're coming down to the end of our time. If anybody wants to jump in, or if there are any, you feel free to put other questions in the Q&A. But I'd like to end and say, when you talk about meeting with local authorities, with the panchayat, councils and wanting them to address some of these problems. I'm wondering if you can just talk a little bit more about what are the actions that you're looking for? What do you want them to do that would really make a difference in terms of this problem of violence against women?
We are expecting the government to form a vigilance committee at the panchayat level.
Okay.
We want to make it an official one, that the government understands it and that it brings out, make it mandatory for the panchayats to have, as they have different committees there. So as they have different committees, we want them also to recognize and have the vigilance committee there, so the issues can be taken at the panchayat level itself. When there is an issue, it can be so. What if at all they have to they want to make a committee, then gender sensitive education has to be given. So the government will get involved in that. See, government is a larger body and it has got very big administrative structures, and in just in one signature they can make sure that across the state things are done, not like us doing in 10 villages trying to do. So we are trying to make sure that the government understands this and try to do something. So that is something which we are demanding, that there has to be a vigilance committee at the panchayat level.
And so those would be formal government structures, not not a structure formed by the women's collective.
No.
Yeah.
Maybe if when we have stronger, we have identified people and we have strengthened them, they are strong enough, automatically they will become the vigilance committee members. That is the hope.
Yeah. Well, let us hope that that is the way things are going to work out, and just to say, it's an amazing process that you have started in so many communities across the state with so many women, and we can see evidence of some of the great progress that you're making and some of the results of that. I'm still struck by the figure of stopping 400 cases of child marriage in one district, which is a amazing and wonderful news to hear. We have reached the end of our time, though. So I'd like to thank everyone for coming to join us today, for your participation. A shout out to Molly for all the questions. That was great. First of all, Sheelu, the Women's Collective, all of the women in the collective, thank you so much for the work you do, for this presentation, for staying up late. I know it's the evening in Tamil Nadu, and then for dealing with all of my many questions. Thank you to our interpreter, Michael, and to Monique for handling the technical side. To my colleagues, Kath, Sophia, and Lorraine for their assistance in making this webinar happen. And then thank you to all of you for attending, for your interest in the Women's Collective and in Inter Pares. And I wish everybody a great remainder of the day in whatever time zone you're in. And to say, Sheelu, I hope that travel will become possible and I will be able to come and see you in person and not on a little screen. I think that would be, I am looking forward to that.